Hi, I'm Dr. Richard Facko from Palos Pediatric Dentistry in Palos Heights. And today we'll discuss sugar and the sugar talk that a lot of people haven't heard. I'm sure we've all heard that sugar is bad for us our whole life. I don't think there's ever been a moment where we thought sugar was good for us. But I bet that you may not have heard exactly why it's specifically bad for our teeth and habits that might surprise you that are more likely to cause cavities than others. If we look at the science behind cavity formation, how does a cavity form? Cavities are actually caused by bacteria. In this case, usually a small group of specific bacteria. Strep mutans is the most well-known bacteria that causes tooth decay. And those germs live in everybody's mouth. It's not that one person has these germs and another person doesn't. We know that our gut, which starts at our mouth, actually has more bacteria in it than our entire body has cells. So we're more bacteria than we are human cells. And most of those bacteria are essential for life. They help us, we need them. But there are some bacteria that can have harmful effects if they exist in large numbers and are left undisturbed. We all have these germs in our mouth. The cavity-causing germs that live in our mouth eat sugar. Sugar is essential for them to exist. When they eat sugar, the byproduct of their metabolism, their poop, for lack of a better description, is acid. And so you have a colony of germs living on your tooth. They're eating all the same things that you're eating, especially sugar, and the byproduct of their metabolism is acid. And so the acid builds up in that small area on your tooth and essentially burns a hole in your tooth. And once that hole is there, those germs infiltrate the hole, and now you can't even clean them off if you tried because that hole is inaccessible to a toothbrush or floss. That's a cavity, and that's why they need to be fixed. Interestingly, not just sugar, but carbohydrates in our mouth get broken down before we even swallow or begin to be broken down and can be broken down into simple sugars. Sugar specifically, also carbohydrates, feed the germs in our mouth that cause tooth decay. The interesting part is that the bacteria don't eat the same amount, the same volume of sugar that we do. So all they need is a tiny exposure for them to be completely satisfied. And so the biggest factor is not how much sugar you're eating, but rather how long that sugar is in your mouth feeding those germs. We know that on average, every time you put sugar in your mouth, it takes 20 minutes for your saliva to clear everything away. So every exposure, regardless of the time of exposure, is an extra 20 minutes of time that those germs are exposed to what they love. Also, the total duration that you're eating is a factor. Grazing or snacking is a worse habit than just eating a set meal and being done in 5 minutes. And lastly, retention. So we know that there's some foods that get stuck into all the little nooks and crannies and cracks and grooves of our teeth. And it's almost like time release sugar into those areas where we end up getting cavities. The three factors, again, frequency, how many times a day are you eating sugar? Duration, how long are you eating the sugar for? And retention, even outside of the active eating times, how long is that sugar staying in all those little places in your mouth? Couple of examples, a piece of candy is one acid attack on your teeth, but the sipping of juice in a sippy cup over a long period of time, we fill up the sippy cup with juice and give it to our toddler and they run off to their playroom and they play and sip and play and sip. And now we've extended the time of exposure indefinitely, however long it takes them to drink that cup of juice. And so that prolonged exposure is a worse habit than the same amount of sugar, but just all at one time in a short period of time. So giving our mouths time to recover in between exposures of sugar is an important thing. Diluting juice, one of my favorite examples. To me, I'd almost argue that diluted juice is worse than full-strength juice. Full-strength juice, I think we limit because we just feel like it's too much. But when you dilute it, it's this much juice and this much water, emotionally we feel a little bit better about it. But the interesting thing is, if they drank this much juice, full strength, and then drank this much water, they would drink this much juice pretty quickly, and then they'd have water after. If it's this much juice plus this much water, now it takes them that much longer. Again, it doesn't take a lot of sugar to completely saturate the bacteria's ability to consume sugar in our mouths. It just drags it out into a longer period of time and ends up actually being worse for our kids' teeth. A couple other things that we hear a lot at the office, in the community, is my kid only drinks juice. He doesn't drink pop. And I'd argue, and I think it's pretty well established, that they're both equally bad. The juice, again, I'd almost argue is worse because we don't feel as bad about it. You're at the store and it's got a picture of an apple on it, 10 apples in this little cup. And I know my kid won't eat 10 apples, so Jesus, sounds like a good thing. Versus pop, I know is bad, but at the end of the day, they're both just water and sugar and acid, and not good for our teeth, but not good for our bodies either. A lot of times we'll hear it's natural sugar, no sugar added, or it's organic. There's no sugar added because they were able to cram enough natural sugar in there that they didn't need to add even more. Taste it, it's all sugar. So the source of the sugar is irrelevant. The germs eat sugar and they don't care where it came from or if it's organic. My kid brushes. Kid brushes his teeth. He does a really nice job brushing his teeth. I don't do a perfect job of brushing my teeth. Nobody does. And so we're trying to balance. The better job you do brushing, sure, you can tolerate a little bit more of the junk in your life, but nobody's perfect. And I'd always emphasize modifying our diet and just eating better before I'd rely on brushing as the solution. And lastly is the sports drinks. As a coach myself, it's frustrating because I see what everybody's drinking at practices and games, and every sport, there's no 1 day a week sport anymore. They're all 3, 4, 5 days a week. So if every time you're engaged in physical activity, you're drinking something sugary, practice is an hour long, games are an hour long, those are prolonged exposures. And we know it doesn't improve performance. We have enough sugar stored in our bodies, in our muscles, in our liver, to supply us for the entire hour of intense athletic activity. We don't need to add sugar on top of it. So there are some things we could do after practice. Eat a banana, eat an apple. So those are good, healthy, whole sources of sugar to replenish, but we don't need sugar during those activities. There's some data to support professional level athletes. There's probably a benefit, but that benefit is probably related to the fact that their games are longer than an hour. A lot of professional sporting events are 2 or 3 hours long, and it's a higher level of intensity. There may be some performance boost at the professional level, but our kids do not need to be drinking sugary drinks at every game and practice. There is no performance benefit. There's only downside. A couple just general takeaways, thinking about frequency, duration, and food retention. Trying to lump things into meals and snacks, and in between having whole foods, water, and avoiding those prolonged exposures is really the best way to manage sugar in our lives rather than eliminate. So I think anybody who's tried the elimination of sugar in their house knows it's impossible. So it's a battle we all fight and try to minimize. But at the end of the day, I think there's some simple ways that we can modify our lifestyle in a way that allows us to do all the same fun things as everybody else, but do it in a way that's a little bit smarter and a little bit healthier. I hope that's all helpful information. If you have questions, feel free to reach out, and we look forward to seeing you soon.